Well, welcome back, serial schlockers. I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. With me is Chris Anonymous, and we are your hosts for this schlocky show. What is up, Chris? How have you been? We took last week off. We've been throwing some episodes out from the vault because we want people to catch up with us so they can see all the stuff we're talking about.
Right.
How have you been?
So, good, man. I've been good. Just kind of chilling and enjoying the time off, watching some schlocky movies.
I've heard you had some run-ins with some ghost peppers.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good choice or a bad choice.
This show might be haunted.
Yeah,
by ghost pepper farts. So anyway, we are talking about something silent but deadly. The Chuck Norris horror science action flick, Silent Rage. Looking at this, I thought that Chuck Norris was going to be the person who was silently raging, but it is not. It is about a serial killer of sorts. We'll get into that is supposedly mute. That's what the Tubi description said anyway. But he does
becomes
say words. He yells. Can
he talks
people
in the
scream
beginning on the phone?
Yeah, which are his only actual dialogue lines in the movie, which is really interesting. So this movie, we were kind of talking about it prior. I think we are both in agreement that this movie wasn't our favorite, but it's a really interesting movie, and I think we're pretty excited to talk about it. It came out in 1982. It cost $4.5 million to make. And it made at the box office $10.5 million.
Really?
But here's the kicker. Here's the best thing. So in December of 1982, the year that it came out, some con men created a charity called Save John Kirby from the Well. John Kirby being the main bad guy. And they raised $6.2 million in this con charity, and
back
it wasn't
in the 80s.
Back in the 80s, and it wasn't discovered. It was not discovered until 2012.
Wow!
So I don't know how true that is. That's what the internet says, and if it's on the internet,
it's got to be true.
Somebody's probably conning you and making millions of dollars somewhere. Right. So most interesting thing about it, second most interesting thing is this is the first Top Kick Productions film. So that is Chuck Norris's production company, which I believe is a family affair. Which maybe you'll talk about a little bit later. I don't want to spoil the show.
No, go ahead.
Well, so Chuck Norris works with his brother Aaron Norris a lot, and I believe he has another brother named Mike Norris. And they have this production company together, I believe, and they make a lot of movies together. So it's just funny because I imagine this family where these people are like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make movies. You need to learn how to run a camera. You need to learn how to choreograph stunts, and you need to learn how to kick people in the face. And we're just going to make an empire. So,
and then they did.
And then they did. This was the first movie where Chuck Norris appears as a Texas lawman. So
that might come back in his narrative, I think, somewhere, some show, something.
Potential origin story, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, he is Walker.
Yeah. Another interesting thing. So we're already kind of getting into it. Spoiler alerts for this movie. We will ruin this movie, and we will probably ruin movies that are not even in our purview. So
we're going to ruin things that you won't even think we could bring up in relation to this.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll ruin movies you've seen. So there is a extended love scene, romance scene, I don't know, in this movie, and there's a very corny song going over it. That song was created and performed by Katie Sagal,
Peg Bundy.
Peg Bundy, Layla.
Yep.
And
that one
Futurama. Yeah. So big name there that I believe while we were watching it, I think my girlfriend called it. She's like, is this the lady from Sons of Anarchy? I was like, no, probably not. And it turns out it is.
Yeah, and I went to look for it on Apple Music, and it's not there. I'm like, man, okay. Yeah,
they're really missing that Silent Rage money on Apple Music. So, well, I have a lot more stuff, but I want to get into it a little bit more. So the way we do the shows is we talk about the web of schlock, like kind of where everything is connected. Then we talk about the good and the bad, what we liked and didn't like about the movie. And then we talk schlock. And that's just kind of the meat of the movie, what it's about, what we would have liked to have seen, what we think it's all about, things like that. So, Chris, what do you got in the web of schlock?
Well, again, so many of these movies we watch have this like theme of isolation, like they're made by people who just don't do a lot of stuff before or after. If they do, it's very minor. Like this guy, it's interesting. The director, he directed this, and in the same year he directed National Lampoon's Class Reunion. They both came out in '82, and they both star Stephen Furst, who you might remember as Dorfman from Animal House, or he's in Babylon 5. But beyond that, the director just did a lot of TV after that. The editor, the cinematographer, all of them have a couple things here and there, but nothing really. Just again, journeyman, just people working. See, the writer, this is the only thing he wrote. He has another credit on a previous Chuck Norris movie, but when you kind of delve into it, maybe it's just not supposed to be there on the IMDb page. Like it doesn't look like he wrote it, but he might have. But that's it. Just two credits. That a previous Chuck Norris, which is maybe, and then this. And this feels like something that was written by some guy who hadn't written much before and didn't write much after. I mean, maybe he wrote a lot, but it's a bizarre story and or script. Acting wise, again, a lot of the people you might have seen in small TV roles here and there, besides Stephen Furst, or Stephen Furst, however you say it. Yeah, he was the only really, really recognizable person besides Chuck Norris. And then you mentioned, of course, the family affair of different relatives of his working in different levels on the production. But yeah, that's really about it. Again, there's just not a lot of connections. And it's always interesting seeing movies like that because they always kind of stand out as like, this was your shot and this is what you did. Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah, the one thing you have your name to. But speaking of names, so I think we have to address the elephant in the room. Chris, what is your favorite? Do you have any favorite Chuck Norris jokes?
I don't know if I have a single favorite Chuck Norris joke. Yeah, there's always the classic Chuck Norris's tears can cure cancer. It's a shame that he never cries.
Right.
But I always like some of the more silly ones, like Chuck Norris is the reason why Waldo is hiding.
I haven't heard that one.
Chuck Norris can touch MC Hammer.
Ooh,
yeah, just stupid.
There should be some MC Hammer jokes.
There should be. So many. There's so many. But yeah, those are just a couple that I'm like, ugh, silly.
Well, I will tell you the absolute best Chuck Norris joke I've ever heard. But I will tell you at the end of the show, right before we're ready to go. We might have to go a little bit long for it.
So everyone who's watching, stick to the end of the show if you want to hear the best Chuck Norris joke ever.
Yeah.
Also, like, subscribe, comment, do
all that good stuff.
Yeah.
If you've made it to here, stick around to the end because it's going to be worth it. The best Chuck Norris joke ever. Anyway, the good, the bad, and then eventually the schlock. I'll start with the good. So I loved the intro to this movie. The opening scene, I thought was actually like pretty legit horror. There's some pretty corny spots in it, like when he first axes the guy in the head. It was just kind of like this just weird dull thud. But like as far as an intro to a movie about a guy who like it's sound that makes him go on his killing rampage. Like I thought it was a pretty legit intro, and the way it was shot, like it had very few camera breaks in it, so it really kept a lot of that intensity. Right, it shows so he's in the house full of screaming kids and this lady talking on the phone, which I can't figure out who these people are. We can talk about it later. Yeah, but it's a single camera shot where he like goes to the phone. He's like, Doc, I can't see you. I'm losing it. Hangs up the phone. Then he goes outside and grabs an axe and like bangs it against some wood, and then goes into the chicken coop and I guess snaps inside the chicken coop or something. We don't know, because he comes back out and goes on his killing spree. And I believe that's all like one long camera shot. And so I thought it was like just a very intense sequence. And I thought that the entire movie would be like this. Once they get into the hospital, Chuck Norris is there and he meets an old love interest. And I thought like, oh, this is really weird the way they like set up this love interest, like how they just give this background right away. But then I thought like, oh, maybe that's because like this is all going to take place all at once, like all in the same night. Like we're just going to keep going and they need to establish really quick how he's connected to this person.
Right.
It doesn't, but that beginning sequence I loved, and the use of the noise and the silence in it. I thought it was just really interesting.
The use of silence was really cool.
We kind of noticed that like the final fight in the movie, other than the sound effects, of roundhouse kicking and things like that. There's no music playing or anything like that. And they just it just had an eerie sound, lack of sound to it.
Yeah, and this mirrors the scene where he kills the woman in the beginning, because that's when I first noticed that the music cuts out.
Right, and
sound effects, and it's a weird intensity.
Just the world that we live in now with the A Quiet Place movies, how they used the lack of sound so effectively to create an intense movie going experience. I can't help but like compare the two in my mind and think like, well, this really corny movie did it at least as far back as the 80s. So some other things I think we'll probably get into later. There's some scenes that I thought were really well lit. The laboratory, I didn't particularly understand the laboratory, but I thought it was really well lit with like these blues and greens and yellows, and I thought it looked very beautiful. Some parts of the movie I thought were like legitimately funny. Like I cracked up during it. However, that will move me into my bad, which is that this movie is right. We have this beginning of very intense horror, and then we go into like almost like slapstick comedy, and it's just a mishmash of tone. And I, as an audience member, I just really can't find a place to plant my feet. Like we have these tangents that they go on, and most of them revolve around the deputy. Is that what he was from Animal House?
Yeah, he was the deputy.
So he's talking about his dead dog, how he like was a kid and he killed this little dog. They have this long extended scene of him like giving this confession, and then that goes into this biker brawl, which I do think the biker brawl was an important part of the movie because it establishes the Chuck Norris's character is strong enough to take on an entire bar of bikers. Therefore, he's strong enough to take on the bad guy. But like the way it played out with like the deputy, he's like supposed to be calling for backup, and he's like, "Yeah, she showed me your boobies. I think I'm in love," and like it's just total like slapstick comedy, right?
Yeah.
And while it was funny, it was just a different movie.
We're on the same page.
And then they just could have used that space in the movie to have crafted a better overall story, which we can talk about later. And I don't know. I might just have to move into the schlock in a lot of this because there's just some weird stuff like the doctor, the mental patient's doctor, like he's there during the surgery and he knows.
Psychiatrist?
He knows that the guy is crazy, but they're talking about bringing him back to life, and it's like a debate, and it goes on. And why isn't he just like, we could do it, but this guy's insane, so we shouldn't bring him back.
Why don't we do that on some other person who's dying who isn't crazy?
But then later he sees him get cut with the knife and sees it rapidly heal, and so when the home invasion happens and the doctor shoots him, he just like, okay, well, that's done. And he goes about, and of course the guy gets up and grabs him and kills him. Like, the guy regenerates. Like you have seen with your own two eyes that he cannot just be wounded and killed. and so it's stuff like that.
And walk away.
Drives me bonkers. Anyway, Chris, what's good and bad for you?
Well, Chuck Norris, you gotta love Chuck Norris. Yeah, he's Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris in a slasher film, even though it's not a very good slasher film, that's a cool idea. My favorite thing was the music. I really was impressed by the music. It was really.
Yeah, I forgot there was some good music in this.
So the music and the silence, the lack of music. When they did like that intro song, and then the whole intro shot, it doesn't fit with the movie. Like, who has this weird stained glass window in an upstairs room of an old claptrap house? You know what I mean? Like just this dilapidated like place in the country with on the farm, and this is in an upstairs room where they're renting to this crazy person. Like, is it almost like a halfway house room?
Who knows?
Kids, but I love that shot.
I feel like someone thought some symbolism was there, but I haven't figured out what it is.
Yeah, nor have I. But I loved the music playing there. And then later on, and then they cut it out and they have the silence. And then there's some other, and some of the music is dated and feels very silly. I'm not saying all the music is great, but a lot of the score I thought was just some really interesting choices in the textures that they used that would have been even more effective had it actually been thriller slasher horror film as opposed to broad slapstick comedy. That's really it for the good. I did like the opening, like you talked about, and there's some other cool shots in there. I like the ending too. I like how it's a very ingenious way how to stop an unstoppable bad guy.
Throw him down a well.
Yeah.
Yep.
He can't climb
it implies
out.
that he can maybe get out. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how hard it is to get out of a well.
Right.
It's a good idea.
We should raise like $6 million to find out. So if anyone was watching wants to donate to get John Kirby
out of the well.
Well, he's back in there again, and we will do the research for you. And we'll do a special episode. Once we reach $1 million, we will do a special episode from the well.
This will help a lot of people.
Yeah. So the bad, just so much. The doofus deputy sidekick, the exposition hospital that doubles as like a Frankenstein laboratory, tonally all over the board. Same thing you were talking about, feels like a ton of different movies. It was about 2/3 of the way through the film when I realized what was going on. Each character is in their own separate genre.
Oh,
they're all existing in their own separate genre, and they're clashing in this movie. But it's straight up like each character feels like, because we do have a slasher, and we do have like the sheriff ass kicking bikers, the kind of exploitation film, and we have the really stupid broad comedy with the kind of doofus character, and we have the total like rom-com romance, like the scene where she's shy outside of his door. That's a really cool shot, actually. He's just coming out and putting his shirt on and puts the music on. And we see her in the background in a distance. And like, she's like hesitating about coming in. I'm like, that's a really cool, like, setup for an actual rom-com or a romance where like you have two different characters and you can see their internal ideas of what's going on separately, and one's in the foreground and one's in the background
and in the same shot.
In the same shot. Like, that's really cool.
The line just ruined it for me, where she was like, I didn't know if you were here, so I just let myself in, or whatever, like, where he's
right. Yeah, I mean, it's an awful scene. It's just a really, really cool setup, but it feels like something out of a rom-com. And then you have the slasher horror film where he's going around killing people, and then you have the sci-fi Dr. Frankenstein where they're like, it's going to live, we're going to, change everything, we can bring people to life. Like, there's a sci-fi movie, and there's a romance movie, and there's a broad comedy, and there's an action movie, and there's a thriller, and there's a slasher, and each character embodies that genre, and then they all just are let loose on the same film set, and it just does not work at all. This was bad. I get that you want to homage a movie that came out 2 years before that became one of the biggest horror movies of all time, and this scene is one of the most iconic. If you know you're not up to that level, if you're not, then just don't do it. Or
maybe they thought they were.
Or do it for comedy and just play it for, just really lay it on. But like, because you're referencing one of the greats and you know that you're not on that level. So it just makes you look bad. And it takes me out of the movie. And then they do it again later on. And this is slightly funnier because you could say that maybe this guy saw Taxi Driver and is just doing the bit from Taxi Driver.
Oh,
you talking to me? Yeah, where he's in the mirror, looking in the mirror. And it's kind of funny because it's Stephen Furst doing it. And in the proper movie, this could be really funny.
But absolutely.
But again, it just feels out of place. And it also feels like you're referencing one of the greats, like Taxi Driver is on, people's top 10 list. Yeah, it's just a classic. And you're like, so it just pulled me out of the movie. And again, you probably could have made it work, but don't do that. But yeah, that's really what it was. So let's get to Schlock, man.
So Schlock, big thing I got to put out there, and you sort of brought it up, this hospital, genetic experimentation laboratory. What was this place? Like,
what was it doing?
Were there no hospitals around? Yeah, in a small town.
Well, maybe they took him there.
They're in a warehouse. What is this place?
Like, was he a patient? He was a patient of the doctor, and he got released. Mm-hmm. So this place is a psych ward, also like a science laboratory. And when they're talking to Chuck Norris in the beginning, they're like, "So you do like experiments on monkeys and stuff?" And the guys are like, "Yeah, something like that." So like, it's not really a hospital. He's like, "We don't get a lot of people here." So why?
It's just like this weird catch-all for whatever they need.
And like, it's just so bizarre, and it's like way too accessible. It feels like a hospital as opposed to like some place where you're not going to just walk in.
Well, they have people in there like getting their blood drawn or whatever. Like it's a plasma biotech place. I don't know. That really bugged me enormously throughout the movie.
and then just all the like thick exposition when they're operating on them. We should get the drug that we've been working on that's not ready yet that might be able to have virginity. Right. You're like, oh my gosh.
So, and also you brought up Frankenstein. So the director said that this was in some ways supposed to be an homage to Frankenstein, and that he wasn't supposed to be like a serial killer, but he was killing people in the same way the Frankenstein monster did, which to me seems like BS. And here's why. So people were saying that this movie it's Chuck Norris versus Michael Myers. And that's why I thought that you picked the movie, because you got a big one for Halloween.
I saw the description and I'm like, I need to see Chuck Norris versus Michael Myers.
And so you look at this picture right here. He doesn't have the mask on, but he's slightly burnt. But that's like the jumpsuit sort of look.
No, it's a slasher. It's just not a very good one.
And he does like this home invasion that like has a lot of visual similarities to when Michael Myers is chasing around Laurie Strode. And so that's the thing that I love most about this movie. I just like this idea of Chuck Norris versus, right? Like Chuck Norris versus Michael Myers. So I guess originally Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface, was considered for this role. And so I'm thinking like, okay, Chuck Norris versus Leatherface, right? Also, Chuck Norris versus Freddy Krueger. Does that movie exist? I want to see that movie. And what's very cool is that in horror movies, aside from the Evil Dead franchise, you really don't get long-standing heroes, right? Horror movies are generally focused on the bad guy, but you usually don't get a lot on like who the hero is and see them go through. I mean, you do in certain ways, but not where they're like
in general, not as much as another thing.
Yeah, they're just like survivors, not like they can actually stand up.
Yeah,
to
Ash
the
is
slasher.
really the exception. I'm sure there's some others out there who really thought about it, but that's the one that comes to mind.
And so
Chuck Norris would have been perfect.
Man, that's the movie really that I wanted to see. They don't really give a whole lot of background on John Kirby. I think they say that he was a bullfighter, which you
really
kind of see. Yeah, they say he's a bullfighter, and you kind of see it in the last fight when he does. It's not really over the top where you're like Toro or whatever.
Should have been.
But he does. Chuck Norris does like launch at him, and he like throws him to the side, which I think is maybe bullfighter-ish. But I was thinking like, what if he was a bull rider, right? So he's very, very strong because he's like a cow handler in some way. And he's just, the reason he doesn't like sound is because of like doing the rodeos and his inner ears gotten jacked up. So it just makes him go crazy. Like, I just think that there could have been such a cooler story here.
Oh, there's a really cool movie in here. I mean, you just cut out all of Act 2.
Instead of killing all the people in the hospital, kill the bikers. Like, bring the bikers back. They set up that story. Bring the bikers back.
Yeah. Have it come full circle where they pay off instead of just filler in the middle. Like, well, he's not ready to come back to life and start killing people, so we got to have him fight some bikers, and then we got to have this really, really long, awkward sex scene / like dating montage of just like it reminds me of the it harkens back to a much better movie, but Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where they're doing the raindrops keeps falling on my head, and that whole montage where they're riding a bicycle and it's all lovey-dovey and this is such a silly shot. And if we go 2 or 3 seconds further, hardcore. If we go 2 or 3 seconds longer, you have a shot of nudity. Like, and it's just right, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. And this is where the Peg Bundy song is playing. And it's so funny, totally off and bizarre.
And it implies that like a long time has taken place because it's so montagey, but really it's like just a couple of hours. They have sex, get in the hammock, go take a hike, get on top of the house. They like just do all of this stuff.
And then it ends with him, of course, with his shirt off, and there's a glass of wine, and they're outside leaning against like a porch in this like scenic view of trees and stuff.
Right.
I'm like, of course his shirt's off. Yeah. Okay.
So I did have this in Schlock as well. Just the whole love thing, that his flirting, like where he like sticks he's like playing with her ear and he sticks his finger in her ear and basically he just gives her a wet willy.
I just wish he would have said wet willy. Into
it. and so like the whole thing is just so awkward. And apparently fans, and I don't mean movie like general audience, Chuck Norris fans watched it and they didn't like it, and they were just like, Chuck, no more love scenes, like no more of this. And he was like, all right, I'll tune that down. I felt pretty weird about it. So it was awkward in the movie, apparently awkward in real life, and it did not have a good outcome.
Yeah, I mean, so I like the beginning, but you should have got rid of that. They should have been experimenting from the get-go, and then it should have just been a straightforward thriller or slasher where it takes place in a shorter time span. You can still have the love interest. If you have the stupid deputy, you got to kill him off right away. You can't just have him have all these, like, basically they're like, we're lucky to have him. Let's give him some more scenes to chew and some more comedic bits. And you're like, oh, it just doesn't fit. And I like them and all, but it just,
just kitchen sink this movie, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to watch more Chuck Norris movies. I hope we have more coming up.
Well.
Anything else in Schlock?
No, I mean, the whole thing is Schlock.
Minute by minute, baby.
Yeah, if you want to know what Schlock is, for better or worse,
this is it.
This is it.
Good place to start.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting ready to wrap up, but before we go, and we might have to go a little overtime for this, but it'll be worth it. The best Chuck Norris joke I've ever heard, my favorite at the very least. You ready?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
All right. So a cowboy, a Marine, and Chuck Norris are out in the wilderness, all sitting around a campfire late at night. Chuck Norris is there tending the fire, keeping it going. And the cowboy and the Marine, they're talking a big game, talking about who's tougher, who's the toughest hombre there. The cowboy starts and he says, well, just the other day, I was walking along and I found this rattlesnake. It struck at me, but I dodged out of the way. And then I reached down and I grabbed it by the tail and I swung it like a whip. Whoop-ha! And I snapped its head right off, and then I skinned it. And now it's this belt I'm wearing right here. And the Marine is like, oh yeah, that's pretty tough. Chuck, he just stays there silent, just still tending the fire. Then the Marine starts and he says, well, a few weeks ago, lion got out of the zoo, came downtown, was eating people. So I, of course, went downtown and I fought that lion. I fought it and I killed it. Then I skinned it, and it's this coat, this lion skin coat I'm wearing right here. And the cowboy's like, oh, yeah, that is pretty tough. And they both look at Chuck Norris, and he just sits there silent, staring into the fire, steely-eyed, slowly turning over the coals with his penis. There it is. Think about it. That's all the time we have. We don't have a new movie next week. We're actually bringing you another movie from the vault. So I can't remember what it is right off the top of my head. I haven't had time to look at it, but it is a good one. And we want you to watch it because we want you to catch up with us. All movies are free on Tubi. Chris, do you have anything left for us?
I will see you in a fortnight, man.
All right. I'm Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Schlock, 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 schlock. Schlocky, schlock, schlock. Schlock. Schlock, schlocky, schlock, schlock. Schlock. I am compelled by schlock. Compelled by schlock. Impelled by schlock. Wait.